agents. Let's take a look on how to manage my DataMiner agents or my nodes in a cluster. Basically, it means how to add new nodes to the system, how to upgrade them, how to configure certain settings as well, but maybe also configure a failover or doing some migration of elements from one node to another node. That's the kind of thing we'll find out in this module. All right, so the DataMiner agents, in this module, we will first take a look at the objectives and then dive into the user interface. In there, we will configure the DataMiner agents or the nodes that we'll find in there. So we will have a list of all our nodes or DataMiner agents in the cluster. There is some configuration we can do there. And of course, upgrading them. That is one of the main things we will look at as well. Together with also the possibility to configure a failover and migrating elements from one server to another server. That's a possibility we have in this UI. And we'll wrap it up with some system information that we can configure in here. Okay, so let's dive into that. So the objective really is to manage my DataMiner agents in my cluster, but also to have some generic information about my company configured in here. You can see the UI already here on the screen, but maybe to show you where that is located, let me pop up my DataMiner cube. So I have my DataMiner cube here. I'm connected to dcpdma.skyline.be. And let's take a look. Where can I find that? The most convenient way that I personally find is just to click on your user icon. And in there, you will find System Center. And actually within System Center, you immediately have the possibility to go to agents. So you can immediately click to agents and you will have the agents page available here. So let me do that again. The alternative is to go to System Center and then you still need to select the agents subpage. If you would like, that is also available in the apps menu here on the sidebar. You can go to apps and you will find System Center in there as well to be able to go to System Center and go to the agents page. Note, we will see various pages here in the System Center later on in the administrator modules as well. So this is only the first one, the agents that we will cover in this module. So remember, you click on your user icon and there you can find it, System Center, and immediately the agents as well. So in there, we will find 3 tab pages. So the first tab page is about managing, configuring your DataMiner system, adding new nodes to it, also checking the IP addressing or some names that you want to change. The status is more showing an overview of CPU, memory, these kind of things. And the system is more system-wide configuration, like my company name, a logo, these kind of things I will be able to add in there. But first we'll go into that manage page. So if we select that manage page, you will see on the left-hand side a list of all the different DataMiner agents or nodes in your system. So in this case, we have 2 agents. If I pop up my DataMiner cube, you will see I only have one server doing the job here. In this case, I have 2 nodes doing the job here in this system. Whenever you select one of the agents, you see the details on the right-hand side and you have some action buttons at the bottom. Note the icon. You have one icon with like an eye in there. That's the one that you are actually connected to. So that's your entry point of the DataMiner system. It is possible that you would have some items in there that are grayed out. It basically means they are not available. They are not in your cluster or maybe just down. We do see they are running, so also the state is indicated next to that. It is possible that there is an orange X indicated, like a timeout indication. That is when that connection is lost to that specific node. And you could also have a warning icon like we have on the first agent here. That means that certain notices are existing on that server. If you select it, you will see the agent alarms. You will see a summary there if there would be any errors or notices, and you can just click on there to open it up in your alarm console, filtered on that subset of alarms there. There is also an indication possible with the triangle and a white X with a red background. That's more for the error messages. That is also a possibility. Now, first of all, before going into the details of the selected agents, you can add and remove items in that list here. So if I would go here to my DataMiner system I can just add in there a new item, and it asks me for an IP address of a server. I can just type in any IP address. I think that this one doesn't exist. So if I add that, it will basically try to contact the new agent, but be aware that this is not yet adding it to the same cluster. We will immediately take a look at the section here where you can define a cluster name. It gives me a timeout there, so it's not able to connect and add it to the list. But if it would add it to the list, it would not immediately add it to the cluster. So it is possible that you have in here other IP addresses which do not belong to the same cluster. We make sure that it's a two-step procedure, that you are very, very sure that you first add it in here, secondly join it to the same cluster name as well, before we will synchronize all the data, because synchronizing all the data and putting it into one cluster is quite an intrusive action. So you need to make sure that you're not mixing the wrong DataMiner agents together, of course. So it's a two-step procedure. You add it in the list. Once it's added in there, you can combine it in the same cluster. So adding and of course removing agents, you can do that as well. So as I mentioned, it will not immediately add it in the same cluster. That's a two-step procedure. Before we add it to the same cluster, if you select a DataMiner agent, you will also see the internal ID. Every DataMiner agent has an internal identifier, in this case 40, and it has a host name, which is basically the computer name of the Windows operating system. And you do also have the possibility actually to overrule that and to give it some kind of alias. So if you want to change the name to something different and you're not allowed to do that by the IT, it is actually possible to configure an alias which is different than your computer name. If you change the name, the computer name, it will of course need to do a reboot, as this is necessary for the operating system. The location fields are just arbitrary fields. I mean, I can fill in there like an address or just a room and a rack number or a rack position, or a site or a country. It doesn't really matter. That's for your own internal reference, you could say. Now, next to that, so the computer name and the location, I do have the cluster, and there it becomes important. Because if I want to add a new DataMiner agent, a new node to my system, I need to do two things. First of all, I need to click on the add and add the new IP address into that list. Once it's added in that list, I select it and I add it to the same cluster name. So I give it a more meaningful name. I can see that in this case, my DataMiner agent is not in a cluster. If I click on my username, you can just see the name of the server there. That's SLC DCP_DMA. And it's not in a cluster. It's alone, so I can actually just also a single node add it into a cluster already in preparation of adding a second one later on. So let's say that I want to give this the name DCP-DMS, for instance, and I can click on Join Cluster. So it's now joining that cluster. It's still alone, but now if I would add a new server, specify the IP address in there, add it to the same cluster, it would basically just combine everything into one single system, and I would not be aware that there are two servers doing the job. Apparently there are two errors popping up. Oh yeah, that's some licensing that I'm not having that is recreated here. Now let me just quickly sign out and sign back in. because I want to show you what the difference is. It's a subtle difference, but if I'm connected again, and if I go to my system here, you can see that now the name is no longer the computer name, but it's the name of my DataMiner system indicated here. Because now I'm connected to the system, and there might be like 10, 20 servers doing the job. And if I go to my agents, then I see, of course, that my DCP DMS has one agent, one node doing the job. And now I can just add another one in there, type in the IP address, and that other server or node that I'm adding just add it to the exact same name. So once I add the IP address, basically the two nodes will talk to each other and say like, hi, I'm a DataMiner agent. Oh, I'm a DataMiner agent as well. This one will say, oh, I'm in DCP DMS. And the other one will say, I'm not yet in a DMS. I'm not yet in a cluster. So they won't sync until I say to the second one, join cluster, DCP DMS. Then they will say, oh, we're in the same cluster. Let's exchange everything. They will synchronize all the drivers they have. They will synchronize all the users, the view structure, the documents. So everything will be synchronized and will behave as one system. If I'm changing an alarm template on one server, the other server will immediately have the update as well. If I change a Visio file on the other server, the first one will have it immediately as well. So they both then have all the settings and all the configuration and take all the changes immediately into account. But I have more capacity to add elements onto my system because an element is still specifically added to one server. So that's the only unique thing that is still added on one single server. That's an element. An element, you need to assign it to one server. All the other settings are typically just system-wide settings, like adding a driver, it's going to be on both. Adding an element, you have to choose on which one. We'll see that in the elements module. Okay, so I added, or I have the possibility to add a new agent in there and add it to the same cluster name by joining it to the same cluster. You can, of course, delete it and remove it again from the cluster. Below that, that's not very visible in the screenshots, but that's basically below there. We have some IP settings that are just shown here. That's read-only information that's grayed out. If you want to change the IP address of the DataMiner agent, you need to do that on the operating system itself. So you just do an RDP to the server, you change the IP address, you will lose your RDP, of course, and you have to do an RDP on the new IP address. And then afterwards, you restart the DataMiner software, or preferably you reboot the whole server to make sure that everything is fine. And then everything should work as before. And the cluster, which is still going to be synchronized as well. It indicates the first two IP addresses with their subnet mask. You could have, of course, more network interfaces in the operating system. A little bit less important, but there is also a possibility to define a virtual IP address range. That's a range of IP addresses you can reserve for this DataMiner agent. So that elements that are created on this DataMiner agent can use a virtual IP address from this range. We do a check that it's within that range, or you can get the first available free IP address. Or if we automatically add elements, we can automatically assign the next available IP address from this range. What is a virtual IP address on an element? Well, basically, if we're retrieving information from the data source southbound, the DataMiner agent processes that and makes it available for you in the Cube interface. But we can also expose northbound a virtual SNMP agent on a virtual IP address, so that the third-party system can basically do SNMP gets and sets on there. And we will translate that to the proprietary protocol or web services or whatever is behind the scenes there. We can basically convert any protocol, proxy that northbound to SNMP. But then you have to assign a dedicated virtual IP address to that element. That's just a range you can define to make sure that we're staying within that range for this DataMiner agents with some checks and some auto-free next IP address functionality. Next to that, of course, we have some buttons that are available. So if I select a specific DataMiner agent, I do have some buttons below there that allows me to stop the DataMiner software or start it or restart the DataMiner software. So here I can restart a DataMiner agent. Note if I select it, so you see the buttons at the bottom there. That's also available in the right-click menu, those items. So you can immediately from the right-click menu do that as well. That's convenient as well. Stopping, starting the DataMiner software. Shutting down, that's shutting down the operating system. So that means that you will need to physically find that server or go to the host operating system to spin up that VM again. That VM or OS will completely shut down. Or reboot, that's also the Windows operating system that will do a reboot. And then we have that upgrade and failover. That's something we will take a closer look at with, first of all, that upgrade. So how do I upgrade my DataMiner system? Well, you need to go to that DataMiner agents page. You select any DataMiner agent. So if you have multiple ones, doesn't really matter. You just click on any of them. You right click and you go for upgrade. And it gives you this window. To keep it short and simple, you select the package that you downloaded from our website and you click upgrade. That's it. You basically download the package from our website. You select it from your desktop or something like that. And you, after you selected the correct package you want to upgrade or select or upgrade to, you click the upgrade and magic will happen. What will basically happen, it will upload the selected package, which could be around, let's say, 500 megabytes. It will upload that package to your DataMiner agents. Once or all your DataMiner agents. Once the DataMiner agents received the package, they will do a shutdown of the DataMiner software. They do an extract of the package with all the necessary actions in there, everything that needs to be done, replacing files to newer files or doing database actions, whatever needs to be done. Once that's finished, it will start up the DataMiner software again. And that happens all simultaneously. If you have 5 or 10 or 20 servers, doesn't really matter. It will simultaneously upload the package, simultaneously shut down the DataMiner nodes, do the upgrade actions, and spin up the DataMiner agents again. So typically these things depends a little bit on the selected upgrade package, but typically that takes maybe 5 to 10 minutes or something. But of course you have to take into account your startup time of your DataMiner agent again. If you have a bigger system, that you also have to add to that. But let's take a look at a couple of the other items that are in there. So I just kept it simple and I said you select the package and you click on the upgrade, which is of course here behind me. You have the upgrade and upload only. I'll come back to that. So you select the package and you click upgrade. That's the most simple thing, and typically that's the only thing you need. What are the available packages? Well, it is actually possible to select a package, and as I mentioned here, to click on upload only. If you click on upload only, it basically takes the package and makes it available, or uploads it to all of your DataMiner agent and makes it available here in the available packages. That could be convenient if you are working with a slow connection and you know that the package might take a while to update, and you need to do an upgrade tomorrow. Well, maybe today you can already take that package and do an upload only. Then you can take your time to just let it upload, and tomorrow when you have to do the actual upgrade, you know it's already there, you can just select it and immediately start without needing to upload once more. So that's why this is there. It also allows you to easily go back to another version as well. So I have my available packages which could come in handy, but typically I just have my package on my desktop, for instance, downloaded from the Skyline website. So I just select it and I upgrade it. Which DataMiner agents do you upgrade? I would recommend just to leave that on all DataMiner agents in the cluster. It is technically possible to choose and select some of the DataMiner agents or nodes in your system, but typically all the agents, they need to run on the same version to avoid version conflicts. It is highly recommended and I would say almost required that your DataMiner agents are running the same version. Maybe there is some kind of small upgrade package you can install on one agent under special circumstances, but typically all agents. What are the advanced options? The advanced options, the first one is automatically start DataMiner after startup. So basically after Windows startup, the DataMiner system will automatically start up. That's of course what we expect if we reboot the server, that the DataMiner starts automatically, but maybe you have a test system somewhere on a laptop or something and you don't want it to start automatically, so you are able to disable this option. The late start, that's recommended because then it allows to actually start faster. It kind of like is strange to say that, but the delayed start means that the services of DataMiner will wait a little bit longer and the operating system and the database will have more time to properly start up and then DataMiner will start up after that. Otherwise it's all together and it actually takes longer. So it's recommended to leave that as it is. Extract all files means that basically all the files will be replaced, and that's definitely necessary for a downgrade. Otherwise only newer files would be upgraded, but by default that is activated and it's recommended to leave it like that. Stop SNMP. Basically DataMiner stops the SNMP service of Windows, and DataMiner is starting up his own SNMP service. So if you are querying with SNMP a DataMiner agent, it's DataMiner responding, not the Windows operating system. You do have the possibility to disable this option so that the Windows SNMP service will still work and DataMiner won't take it over. You can still configure DataMiner to have it on another port, for instance, or have Windows on another port. Reboot after upgrade. If you want to combine a reboot of the operating system with an upgrade, you do have the possibility to combine that conveniently here. There are some failover options. It's not indicated here. Let me go back to the upgrade window. The failover option, it's by default the default policy. What is the default policy? Well, that's actually configured in the system settings. Over here, the failover option, here you have the options as well. So that's the default option that is going to be chosen here, whatever you configured there. You do have the possibility to tweak it here as well, but we still need to talk about failover. It basically allows you to say like, okay, by default, it will upgrade the main and the backup, both of servers. So I have a failover, a one-on-one. Both of the servers will upgrade simultaneously. So they both go down, upgrade, and they both come back. And this one was maybe doing the job. The second option you have is upgrade the backup agent first. So the one not doing the job, you bring it down, you upgrade it, it's coming back, and then you bring it basically online, and the other one goes offline, and then you upgrade this one as well, and then you're finished. You had to do one switch over. The last option is basically the same, but you still do another switch over to go back to the original server you were running on. That's the subtle difference, that there is still another switch back again at the end. But we'll talk about failover in just a minute as well. So once you select a package and you click on the upgrade, you will be able to follow the progress here. On the second tab page, it will bring you to that second tab page where you will see all of your DataMiner agents in your system when it started, the status of like uploading, shutting down the DataMiner system, replacing files, starting all kinds of processes to do the upgrade, and then starting up DataMiner again. And then the end time will also be indicated. And potentially if there would be any notices or errors, you would also see that here. So in this list, you can nicely follow the progress. So how do you do an upgrade? Very simple. You right click on it, you go for the upgrade option, you select the package you downloaded, you click on the upgrade, and you sit back and relax, and you will see the progress passing by here. That's how an upgrade works. Now, failover, that's that second button or right click menu that you have available that we still need to further discover. So you do have the possibility to configure a failover for a specific DataMiner agent. First of all, we still need to cover the module backup, where we will talk about configuring a backup of your DataMiner system. So that's the bare minimum you need to do, configure a backup. So it means that every night or so, it will take a backup of your complete system. So if something happens, you can still go back to that backup and recover that. But if that happens in the middle of the night, you basically need to get out of bed. You need to take and find some server. You need to restore the whole system on there. And if that's a big database, it's going to take ages. So you're probably going to take another a few hours to be able to get that job done. If you want to avoid that, you can configure a failover. A failover means that for a specific DataMiner agent, you are basically having a twin, you could say, an exact same buddy standing by to do the job. And they are identical, and both of them are capable of doing the job. So if the first one fails, the other one can just immediately take over. And we are here and we are basically connecting to one or the other, and we don't really know which one is doing the job, or we don't really care. We can know, of course, we can see it here that it's the upper one that is doing the job. So basically you have two DataMiner nodes that are exactly the same, and they are identical, and one of them is doing the actual polling and data retrieval in your system and doing all the processing and all the alarm generation. And if it would fail, the other one has a perfect sync and a perfect copy of all the settings, all the trend data, all the alarms, everything, and it can immediately take over to do the polling and to do the further processing in your system. So that's how a failover works. So it is a one-on-one system, so that's an important remark there. So if you have one DataMiner agent, you need to have another DataMiner agent next to it to do the job. If you have two DataMiner agents or 5 DataMiner agents, you need 5 DataMiner agents to have a full failover for your system. It is, of course, not required if you have 5 DataMiner agents to configure a failover for all 5 of them. Maybe there's only one which is containing some very important elements, some video routers or something you always need available. You can just configure a failover for that single node. Only that DataMiner agents, I will configure a failover. The other ones, they have some less important elements that I can just lose for a couple of hours, you could say. So what do I need? I need, first of all, of course, my primary DataMiner agents, which is already configured and doing the job. I have already been working on it for months, you could say. So it could be completely configured and finished. And next to that, I need to have a newly, freshly installed DataMiner agent with no configuration on it. So nothing on it. No elements, no drivers, no database, no alarms, nothing. It's just blank. And the DataMiner ID of the backup needs to be the same DataMiner ID of the primary. So it is an exact copy. It has the same DataMiner ID as well. So everything is exactly the same on both DataMiner agents. And I don't put it in a cluster. So you don't put it in your DMS, in your cluster. You don't do anything with it. It's just blank, freshly installed. And I will need some extra IP addressing, because if we configure that, let me show that in the following window. So if I configure my failover, I enable failover. what I will have is my existing DataMiner agent will be here. I can show that in here as well. Let me show you. If you right click and I want to configure a failover for my DCP DMA, I right click, I go to failover. It will basically show my existing agent, my DCP DMA here on top, and I can add another, and I can add his buddy, his backup. I can configure it over here. Now, what we will do is you will notice that the IP address of this server that I have, that is 10.10.18.10, it is actually immediately suggested over here. So if let me enable that, it's more clear. So it's immediately suggested here as my virtual IP, and this one no longer has an IP address. How does that work? I mean, of course, every physical server or VM needs to have an IP address at all times. That's the one you connect here. That's the one which will never change. I can always do an RDP on there to access the operating system and to take a look at the Windows configuration. So that's the fixed IP that I have here for this server. And here I can click on there. It opens up on my second screen here. And I can specify the IP address of my second server to add it in there. Now, so this is clickable to configure it. Now, what it does, it suggests to take the existing IP address as the virtual one. This is the virtual IP address. We call this the virtual IP address because this one will connect to either the first one or the second one, depending on which one is doing the job. And it suggests this IP address here because we are already using DCP DMA for ages, so everybody has it already in his history and favorites, and the emails have been sent out, and there are some DNS names that are linked to it. So I don't want to change that 10.10.18.1. No, the 10.10.18.1 needs to be the failover, the virtual IP address, which will point now to the first or the second one, depending on which one is doing the job. So here on the right hand side, you can see currently when I navigate to my well-known IP address or DNS name, which is pointing to this IP address, it will bring me to the first one. And if I switch it over or this one fails, it will basically switch to the backup one. And I don't need to change anything. Tomorrow I use the same IP address or the same DNS name, and maybe it will bring me to the second agent doing the job. I don't worry anymore about which one is doing the job. So that's the virtual IP address concept that is being used. Of course, that's very interesting also if you have some elements in your network which are sending SNMP traps, for instance, to your DataMiner system, or unsolicited messages. They are basically able to just throw that to this IP address, this virtual IP address, and it will end up on the DataMiner agent doing the job. Today, that's the top one. Tomorrow, that could be the bottom one, depending on which one is doing the job at which point in time. That's the corporate IP address. Also, of course, I can do that for the acquisition LAN. So for the second network interface, I could optionally also configure a virtual IP address, which will be on there or be on the second one. Now, how does that work in reality? Well, in reality, let me close that one for a second. In reality, this one is doing the job. So this operating system or DataMiner will basically assign this IP address to this server. So in the Windows IP config, you will be able to see this IP address will be assigned in this Windows operating system. If this one fails, or if this one goes offline, it will release this IP address, and then this server will assign the IP address to his network interface card. So that's basically how it works behind the scenes, you could say. So how do you configure it? So you enable the checkbox as I was doing there. So you right click, you go to failover, you enable the checkbox. So it suggests to use the well-known IP address we have been using for ages over there. So this one will need to get a new IP address. Let's say the 10.10.18.11 I have reserved for that one. And over here, I need to select my brand new server, freshly installed with the new with the same DataMiner ID, which is, for instance, the .12, which is not going to exist. So I'm not going to apply, otherwise it's going to time out again. So that's my second server that I have. So I have the 11, which is never going to change on this server, the 12, which is never going to change on this server. I can always RDP to that, but my users, everybody in my system, is just keep on using the .10 to be able to connect to the DCP DMA or the DNS name as we do here. Okay. So let's go back to my slides to go into a couple of more details on the failover, more specifically the buttons on the lower right-hand side. The first one is just to verify some status. So it brings you to this status window where you can just see some information about is the heartbeat going fine, the ping, the database sync. So you have some more details there on the actual status of that syncing between those two DataMiner agents or the two failovers. The next button is the switch button that allows you to do a manual switch. So if I want to initiate a manual switchover, that's the place where I can do it. There is a possibility that there is another button there, a sync button. It's not in a screenshot because this is not available with a Cassandra setup. So only with other previously used databases like MySQL, you would have that sync button to have some information on the syncing of the database. With Cassandra, it's basically the Cassandra replication, the native Cassandra functionality doing the replication between the two nodes. So it's not DataMiner doing the job, while with MySQL, it was DataMiner doing the job of the database sync. The advanced window, if you click on there, that brings me to this pop-up. In this pop-up of the advanced configuration, I have a couple of tab pages. And the first tab page is probably the most important one because here I choose whether it's an automatic or a manual failover. An automatic means that DataMiner will detect if something goes wrong, and if the other server is going down, it's no longer available, it will detect that and the other one will go online. If we go for an automatic, it will be important to make sure that your heartbeats are correctly configured. I'll come back to that. Or you could also go for manual. Manually basically meaning that you will manually switch over to the backup whenever you feel it's necessary. So if your DataMiner server goes down, you can first do some checks, do some pings and verify if nothing is wrong. And after you've done a couple of checks, you can then say like, okay, let's go to the backup agents and bring that one online. If you navigate to the IP address of the backup agent, which is not doing the job, you will get a message that it's currently offline, this node. You can actually click on there to bring it online. So automatic or manual, it's by default on manual. So be aware, once you set it up, it's by default on manual. You need to specifically put it on automatic because then we also advise you to take a look at the heartbeats. The synchronization, that's basically for the synchronization traffic. There could be a lot of traffic because the whole database of with all the alarms and the trending not only needs to be stored on the main agent or the online one, but also the offline one needs to continuously get all the alarms and all the trend information into that database. So all that synchronization information is going through the network interface cards that you are selecting here. So let me remove myself for a second. So you can select just in a drop down the network interface cards that you want to use for the synchronization traffic. The virtual IP addresses, there you will also find for the other network interface cards the possibility to configure a virtual IP address for every network interface card. As I discussed already in this drawing, the virtual IP addresses here, that's the same thing there. Now that heartbeats, that's an important page because that will define when DataMiner can decide to do a switchover. You will find in there two normal heartbeats. Basically, here we have the agent 75 and the agent 73. So basically, the 75 will do a verification that the 73 is still there, and the 73 will do a verification that the 75 is still there. So basically, they are checking each other. And if one or the other says like, "Oh, my buddy is gone," and I'm currently offline, he was actually doing the job, I'll quickly take over. So they are continuously checking each other. And you can see next to that, you can also go into the edits and see that in the pop-up. Let me remove myself for a second again. So here you have the interval and the maximum failure. So the interval indicated here as well, and the maximum failure. So the interval is how many seconds, each 20 seconds it will do a verification, and there is a maximum failure of 6. So that means that basically it will take about 3 minutes before a switchover will happen if the heartbeat fails, because it's taking, in this case here, 30 seconds for a check, and it will fail 6 times. So that's basically 3 minutes that it will take before the switchover will happen. So you already noticed that's an important setting to be able to configure how quickly your DataMiner system needs to react on a failure. It is, although, highly recommended to add inverted heartbeats. What's an inverted heartbeat? Well, there is a possibility if I have 2 DataMiner agents and they are basically on 2 different sites. Let's assume they are on 2 different sites, and this one is doing the job and the other one is not doing the job. And all of a sudden there's some kind of like big network interruption between those 2 sites. What will happen is that the offline one will say like, "Oh, I can no longer detect my buddy there. He probably went offline, he died, and I basically need to take over." So this one will go online as well. And basically you have 2 DataMiner agents that are doing the same thing, using the same virtual IP address. So as soon as you fix the network problem, they will be both in the same network with the same IP address, and they will both be doing the same job. So you will have some conflicts there. DataMiner will try to gracefully handle that, and one of the agents will quickly go offline again. But if you would like to avoid that, we recommend that you add some kind of additional heartbeat in there to be able to check that a DataMiner agent is still on the network. So let's say we have somewhere some kind of like domain controller or some switch that we say like this core switch or this domain controller. That one is always available. That's my verification if I'm still on the network or if there's a network problem. That means that I will add an additional check in there that this server will check if it's still on that, if it can still reach that switch. And the other one will also check if it can still reach that switch. So if there's somewhere a network interruption, it's probably only going to be one site that is going offline and it's isolated from that switch. So it will no longer be able to reach his buddy, but he will also no longer be able to reach that switch. And that's how he knows that. He says like, "Oh, I'm probably here in some kind of network interruption situation, so I won't go online to do the job." So that's why you need to add, and in this case, this was configured. The 75 is checking the .60 address here, and the 73 is also checking the .60. So they are both checking if they are still on the network or if they are maybe isolated. I say inverted heartbeat switch because it's basically the other way around. If this one is no longer, if the heartbeat fails to his body, he needs to go online. But if the heartbeat fails to the switch, he actually needs to go offline, because then he says like, oh, I'm no longer on the network where I should be, I'm going offline. So that's why it's an inverted heartbeat. If the heartbeat fails to the body, it needs to go online. If the heartbeat fails to the switch, it needs to go offline. So if you add a switch or a heartbeat there, you can add from any of the two DataMiner agents to the other agent, or to an IP address of a switch, a core switch, or a domain controller, add a certain heartbeat with a specific interval or max failures configuration there as well. And that's where you go with the go offline instead of go online option. So if the first agent checks the other agent, that's a regular one. If you check a switch somewhere, then you need to activate this go offline instead of online checkbox, the inverted checkbox. So the between agents, it's just regular. Between an agent and some other network switch or domain controller, you have to check that inverted. All right, so that's how you configure your failover. So you go in there, you configure the IP addressing as you should with the virtual IP address. Both servers have their dedicated fixed IP address. And then you can go for a manual or an automatic. If you go for that automatic, think about those heartbeats to make sure that they are correctly configured in there. Now, what else do we have in there? Let's maybe take another look here. So to wrap it up, just once more. So the failover. So remember, you activate the failover. The IP address of my server is automatically moving here to the virtual IP address. So I give it a fresh new one, and I configure where my freshly new installed server is. And then if I apply that, all the syncing will happen. And I can go to the advanced to actually also make sure that my configuration of automatic or manual switchover and the heartbeats is correctly configured. That's the most important thing to remember. Now that migrating interface, or the status interface, I should say, in the status, you will find a migrate button there. I don't see it on my screen, but that is because I only have one server. If you only have one server in your DataMiner system, you're not able to migrate elements from one server to another server. That's logic, of course. But I do have the possibility to verify here in the status page that I have one server, what the average CPU load is, the free virtual memory, free disk space. My server is up for 3 weeks. The DataMiner software is up for 2 weeks, and I have 105 elements on there. Let me pop up another DataMiner system and go to the agents page, because here I do have 2 or 3 agents. So if I go here to the status page, I will see that I have one server who is actually having a lot more load. So this CPU load is a lot more than the other 2 ones. And the free virtual memory is also indicated here, the free disk space, how long they have been running, the server and the Windows operating system, and how many elements that they have on there. Now, because I noticed that maybe the load on this agent is a little bit higher than the other ones, or if you add a brand new server in your system, it won't have any elements yet, and you want to migrate some of your elements, well, you do have the possibility to do so with the button on the lower right-hand side. So here I have multiple servers, so I have the migrate button available. If you click on there, you basically get have a list of all the elements onto your system. So you can select some of your elements. You can see some load indications. They are currently on DMA2, and I can just bring them, for instance, to DMA1 or to the last DMA there, because this one has less elements. You click on the migrate, and what will happen is that it will move not only the configuration of these elements to the newly selected DataMiner agents, but also all the alarm history and all the trend performance data. So all the database information is also being moved to that new server by doing this action here. That is, of course, if you're having individual databases for every server and not working with a cluster in there. So that's how you can see how the load is spread across your DataMiner agents, how long they have been running, how much elements you have on there, and how you can actually migrate, select some of your elements, do the migration, and with just one click of a button, it will reconfigure your elements onto a new server, all along together with the alarm history and trend information, performance trending that is moving along with it. So if it's, of course, a very big element with a lot of information in the database, it might take a little bit of time to move that. If it's a small element, it's going to be going in like instantaneously, you could say. The last page is then the system information page. The system information page, that's the third tab page. Let me go back to my DCP DMA. So the third page is my system page. So here I have some general information. So what do I find on there? First of all, some system contacts. So typically you can identify there the administrators of your system, you could say, who to contact when there is something that you want to discuss about this DataMiner system. And then there is some general information, and on the right-hand side you have your logo that you can add. This logo is being used in the reports that we send out via email, for instance, and the reporting interface. And also your company details with the name and the address and the contact details is added in the header of your email reports. So the email reports will contain this information together with the logo. And note that the name of your system here, that's also the name of your root of your surveyor tree structure. So the surveyor tree structure here has the Skyline communications. Well, that's actually because we have here Skyline communications, because in the right click, if you would rename this one, you basically rename that system name there. Okay. So the system name or the surveyor name is taken from your name indicated here. And another one that I want to mention is the email address that is specified there. The email address, that's the from email address when DataMiner is sending emails. Well, there is actually a possibility to overrule that in the DataMiner XML. But if you type in here info@skyline.be, the emails will be sent from info@skyline.be. If you don't want that and you want it to be sent from like no reply at skyline.be, you can actually overrule that in the DataMiner XML. And then the contact details remain here with info@skyline.be. The emails will be sent from no reply at skyline.be. And of course, as I mentioned, the logo you can change on the right-hand side. So you can, of course, change any of those fields. If I go back, you can just select a new contact or you can specify other details in there or change the logo. So that's the agents page. The agents page is really about managing your DataMiner agents, your nodes in there, your DataMiner servers, where you can upgrade to a new version. You can add new nodes into your system. Of course, make a cluster in there as well. Remember that cluster, adding a cluster is 2 steps. First, add the IP address, then add it to the same cluster name as your service you already added in that list. And of course, we had the possibility to upgrade and configure a failover if you want to have a backup standing by for doing the job. And lastly, we were of course looking at some general system information. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's go for the next one.